Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, one is star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. And cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right under Jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. Na, 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 na,
Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs. This week's special guest is Rylee Meek. Rylee is the founder and CEO of the Social Dynamic Selling System, which turns dinner seminar marketing into a science. After responding to a small ad on Craigslist in 2009, Rylee was introduced to a new concept of selling, one which has radically changed his life forever. Having just $673 in his bank account, but more importantly, a burning desire for more, Rylee went on to produce over $100 million in sales over the past 9 years. Now that he's perfected his model through continual trial and error, he's sharing this learned wisdom and is on a mission to help other entrepreneurs and business owners achieve the revenue goals they have to live the lifestyle they desire. Everything he teaches is tried, tested, and refined and proven to create predictable, sustainable, and scalable selling system. So here to talk about all that and so much more is our guest, Rylee Meek. How are you, Rylee?
Good, Ryan. Thanks for the intro, man.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a step back in time. You said you saw an ad on Craigslist in 2009, and that's kind of what got you all into this.
Yeah.
What was the ad for? How did that kind of open your doors into sales?
Yeah, man. It was a unique time in my life. I just returned from Mexico from basically a failed business venture, and I was on a quest or a journey, I guess, just looking for that next opportunity. And of course, Craigslist was the place to go at that time. It's funny to say now, but the ad simply said, work 3 days a week and make $10,000. So I thought, yeah, right. Like that's not possible. But of course I had to inquire upon it. And that was when I was first introduced to this concept of selling, one to many versus one-on-one. And at first I didn't really comprehend what that meant, because everything I had done prior to that I've always been in sales, but it was always, what I loved about that, the concept of, earning what you're worth or just being on commission, was the idea that, they always touted that, your earning ability is uncapped, or, you can earn as much as you're worth. And I realized that wasn't really true because, there's only a certain amount of time in the day. And certainly I could sell higher ticket items, make higher commissions, things like that. Maybe hire and manage a sales team to earn overrides. But there's still only a certain amount of time in a day in which, depending upon how long your presentations go, you're going to run out of time, or just emotionally, you can only go so far. So I didn't really buy into that concept. But when I saw this gentleman told me, I responded to the ad and got on the phone with this guy. And he started talking about selling to groups of people versus one-on-one. And I didn't really grasp that until he actually invited me to one of his events. I was a couple hours away, and I drove down and I walked into this room, and he had, roughly 25 or so people there. And he delivered a presentation. And after the fact, he simply asked for a follow-up appointment. And so it was a way in which he was kind of sifting the sand, to only meet with those that were actually serious enough to inquire upon the price, or, maybe had more questions that gave him the ability to, leverage his time, but also his marketing dollars, by selling to a group of people versus just marketing to sell one-on-one.
So I have a hard enough time getting one client versus 25 people in the door. How do you go about, getting them there initially? I mean, it's almost like, yeah, it seems like a pretty hard process to get 25 people there in the first place.
It can be. It certainly can be. However, now that I had my own companies at the time in which we sold numerous different products and services with this format. But now when we take on clients to teach them this, we always start with the end in mind, of course, which is who is your true client avatar, right? Who is your ideal client? And some people have no clue. Like this product great for anybody. But we really want to dial that in and get super, super hyper specific on that, because that's going to allow me to identify how I'm going to market to them. Is it, we do a ton of direct mail. Is it Facebook? Is it, other, cold calling, whatever it is. And we want to target how that person is going to respond. And then we craft our message based upon, how they're going to respond as well. So there's a number of ways that we can go about doing it, but we have to understand who the true client is first, and then we can determine how the message that we're going to craft, the media that we'll actually use to get them to take action and respond to our initial marketing.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things that seems so obvious, but I think so many people miss it. I wonder, do you have any pointers, or like how is there a process that you go through in helping somebody try and understand who their end user is or who their customer is? I've seen models in the past, or like, I work in the marketing advertising industry, and we a lot of times will craft personas, and try and create an idea of a persona. But if you're just starting out in business, you're trying to maybe find a fit somewhere, how might you talk to somebody or teach somebody to identify their primary customer?
Yeah, so it's easier, obviously, if you're already selling your product or service, to kind of reverse engineer who that is. If you've got the data where we can reverse engineer who that true client is, that's an easier process, of course, to be able to do that. But for a startup, somebody that's just coming out the gates, they don't have a sales system, they haven't even sold anything yet. It's, somewhat of it is a guessing game out the gates, right? We don't know necessarily, you can have the best product in the world, but if your message sucks, it is, you're not going to sell anything. Like if you build it, they do not come. I don't care what anybody tells you. You have to have a sales system in place to attract clients. And if you're starting out right now and you don't know, sometimes you really just have to kind of think of what problem does that product solve, right? Because that's really what we're selling. We're not selling the product, we're selling the benefits of the product. And even further than that, the benefits of that product. And that's how we're going to be able to craft a message to speak to that, again, hopeful or potentially ideal client, to get them to take action and want to even listen to you, want to even care to listen to you, to come on out to an actual, live event. So some of it out the gates, it can be a guessing game, but we do want to at least narrow it down. And then as a true marketer, we're constantly testing. You always have to have an A/B test, and we're continually, what messaging works today is totally different than what worked 3 months ago, right? Like it's because just, times have changed, of course, with what's going on in just society. And so you constantly need to be testing your marketing, your messaging, to make sure that you're continually getting better. Otherwise, you're either progressing or you're regressing, right? And so as a true marketer, we're constantly doing that with all of our messaging and the media that we're using, again, whether it's direct mail or Facebook or, SEO, whatever it is.
So how does your system kind of differ from just, a normal sales process? Your company's called Social Dynamic.
Yeah.
What can you define that for us? Like, what's the social aspect of it that sets you apart?
Absolutely. And I think I get this question a lot, and really why we even called the company Social Dynamic Selling System is because of that. Is I want that question, because a lot of people just think, oh, it's social media or, social selling, whatever that is. But really at the core of it, there's a social dynamic that happens in any given relationship, any given situation. Right now there's a social dynamic going on between the three of us, it could be via computer and audio, but there's still a social dynamic that's happening here. Or if you go out to, a restaurant or a bar, there's you there, there's other patrons, there's the bartender, the hostess, and there's a dynamic that's happening there within a group setting. And what we've done is we've taken that and we just simply by knowing how people react or respond and how to communicate effectively, we can use that to our advantage within a group selling process, selling one-to-many versus just selling one-on-one. So the social dynamic is a key component to taking people on an emotional journey when we're delivering our presentation, getting them to, hypnotically say yes within their subconscious mind. So at the end of it, we're creating an environment where they simply want to do business with you, right? Nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to buy. And so what we've done is been able to create that environment where people simply, for whatever reason, they just want to do business with us versus, feeling like they're pressured or, they're at a timeshare meeting and they're, can't leave because the door's locked or whatever the case is.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've been to a few of those timeshare meetings and they're pretty confrontational.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just one of those, you go in for the free, boat ride in Cabo, and now all of a sudden you signed up for a $30,000 condo that you didn't want.
Right.
Isn't that kind of predatory? I mean, isn't there the manipulation tricks that they want to sign up at the end? Isn't that kind of I don't know. I've been to a few of those seminars, the real estate, get rich $1 million in 2 days, or you show up because your friend invited you out and all of a sudden you're selling knives for Cutco. What's,
yeah, I love it, man.
Yeah.
So a couple things that I want to address on that, because I love talking about this too, because, with what we teach, we use a lot of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and how to speak to people's subconscious mind. But by no means is any of it manipulative. I mean, you can't make somebody do something they don't want to do, right? At the end of the day, because we get just as many no's as we get yeses. And I don't care about that because I know the numbers with our system, and the numbers always work out. And if I can quickly get to a no, that's great. I don't have to waste my time on that. So we're definitely not the rah rush to the back of the room, get your $48 real estate course that I'm going to upsell you into a something else. That's not us by any means. We are all about know, like, and trust, right? Sure. And then that's what I think people appreciate nowadays, because the salesman of old it doesn't work anymore, right? This slick sales guy that's rolling in, he's got the Rolex, that does not work anymore. People are intelligent, and they're becoming more sophisticated buyers. So we have to create an environment in which they know us, and why we host a lot of these events in just restaurants, private rooms within a local restaurant, is because it is a social setting. Again, the social dynamic aspect of it, but it's in a location that they've probably been to before, right? They've probably had dinner there before because we're picking a decent restaurant. So they're comfortable, right? They know where the parking is. They can walk in, they can feel like they're just going out for a nice dinner. The door is never locked. If somebody wants to get up and leave in the middle of my presentation, I invite them to do it, right? Because there's things that I can actually do to win that crowd over, because they're all going to think that guy's a butthead, right? So there's key components that we teach all of our clients to always use in your favor through the selling process. Because if people know you, you're a likable person, right? Some of that just isn't teachable. Some people just aren't likable people, but they're going to like you. And then certainly they're going to trust you. If you did a compelling enough presentation, they trust you. And then all we're doing is asking for that next appointment. Hey, just if this was of interest to you, we create sense of urgency, of course, to get them to take action now. But then we're meeting with them either, after the presentation or the following day. If they're coming into a clinic setting, like we work with a lot in the medical world, where they'll come in for a consultation in a clinic, or we're going out to their home, or we're meeting at another social setting, a coffee shop, whatever it is. And then at that point, there's zero manipulation involved with that. We've just sifted the sand. I kind of call this like our offline funnel, right? Everybody hears about funnels online. And really, we've taken it offline where we're giving people that social, aspect of being able to earn that know, like, and trust that sometimes can't come across in a webinar or a short sales call or whatever that is. And I think especially now, as we're coming out of being on lockdown, I think it's going to be something that more and more people are just going to be craving, is just that social interaction with people that we've been deprived of over the last couple months. So that aspect of it, I know I went long on this question for you, but I think there's zero manipulation at all involved with this. It's more about influence and authentically persuading people to make a decision that they already know they want it or they don't, right? Otherwise, they're not going to give me that second appointment if this was of zero value or zero interest to them.
Sure.
Well, I think it's one of the things that you brought up sort of early and sort of hit again there in the recap, is that you're selling the benefits of the benefits. You're trying to solve a problem that they may or may not have, right? So whether consciously or subconsciously they have this problem, they already have the understanding of whether this thing you're doing is going to work for them or not. And by selling the benefits, you give people the opportunity to sort of, I don't know, mentally shift things around and go, oh, okay, well, this is an issue that I've been trying to work through. Maybe this thing would help. And so, to the idea of being predatory or manipulative, I think the fact of the matter is that basically by selling the benefit and not pushing the product, versus, saying, oh, well, this is the be all end all, slices, dices, cuts and juliennes, fries, all this stuff. You can actually, speak to the benefits of the thing. And if that benefit happens to align with the need, then there's, some room for further discussion. And so I think that maybe that's the difference. And then I guess the social dynamic, that you mentioned is sort of the differentiator between traditional sales styles. And so I wondered though, we were talking about kind of what makes you guys different as, different sales processes exist and things like that. But I wonder if you couldn't just take us sort of through a traditional sales process. Like people who haven't had sales training might not even really understand what, why we might need a sales process of some variety. You know what I mean? Like I think people understand inherently the idea that, I have product, I sell, gasoline or peanuts or whatever it is, you have a product to sell. And, obviously we're selling all the time, know me, like me, trust me, to sort of hit the elements you're talking about. So we're selling all the time, but I wonder if people have ever really thought, or for a lot of people, maybe they've never even really thought about what a process feels like. And I guess what I'm talking about is maybe a little bit more tactical, like sort of what are the steps of developing your sales relationship? Yeah, dude, this is fantastic because we didn't even talk about this, but I literally just finished my second book that it's going into be publishing and things right now, and just created another course on this on really what we call the social dynamic selling process, the blueprint, and it boils down to really 5 components of it. And the very, very first thing, everybody's always probably heard this, but is that building rapport, right? Like that's crucial, and so we teach our clients to how to do that almost instantaneously, upon meeting somebody, by learning things like matching and mirroring and just getting them to, matching their voice, their tonality, their, the timbre, the how loud they talk versus how quiet they talk, just different things like that we help people to develop that rapport. Again, that's the first component of knowing and liking people, right? People do business with those that they like. Right? They don't buy something from somebody that has turned them off or, isn't necessarily like them. People want to do business with those that they like. So we always build rapport, and then effectively asking questions. Asking questions is what's going to allow you to identify the actual need, right? So build rapport, effectively asking questions. And then once we've gathered those questions, so we teach people how to do this, effectively by continually, and it could be as simple as continually asking why, why, and ultimately it's going to boil down to identifying the need that they actually have. What is that true need? And then by your offer, if what your product is or your service is of value, you link that need to your offer, right? That's the fourth step, is linking that need to the offer by creating value so they understand that your need can solve their problem, and then obviously closing. Right, how to actually effectively close by using things like embedded commands and overcoming objections. Because
if you haven't overcome your objection, if you're continually getting objections, that's a telltale point of what you should add into your presentation, right? Of establishing that value and linking your need to that. So we teach in all of our presentations, we're identifying what those first objections are, and then I'm gonna put them in a story format within my presentation. So even if it's subconsciously, that objection is not that it's coming across to my potential customer or client. That objection shouldn't happen at the end. If it is, then I'll just have to say, remember I mentioned this. So it's an easy transition if you hit all 5 of these components, or if you're continually getting an objection, just go back to step number 3, which is identifying the need and linking your need to that, and then again continuing through the actual closing process. So those are the 5 key components in any sales situation that people, if they want to effectively present and close better, just sticking to those 5 things, your sales rate, your close rate is going to drastically go up.
So, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I was just going to say, no, I think it's really interesting. I've been doing a lot of reading lately on some of these different things. So it was interesting to hear. I just finished a guy named Chris Voss's book that, he's a former FBI negotiator or something. Yeah. He talks a lot about these tools like mirroring and sort of, reflecting things back and all that kind of stuff. And so it was interesting to hear you say some of these things, because it's sort of tying together a lot of the reading I've been doing. And I look at these systems, like, I mean, one that I've been introduced to is called, I think it's called the Sanders submarine or something. And It's got sort of these different steps, sort of broken like this, with sort of an interim, ask to get you into the next phase of the thing. And so it's kind of interesting to hear how you've sort of built that into the social selling process that you're doing, that there's this underlying sort of tried and true methodology. And now you've added this social component, which just takes things to kind of another level. So I think it was really interesting. Mostly wanted to compliment you on that.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, your current product that you're personally selling is sales training. What other industries have you worked with that you've taught people how to sell their product? Because really your product isn't really a physical item. It's not widget A. It's more like, we're going to teach you how to sell someone else's, your actual, if you're a real estate agent, we're getting clients for you. If we're doing this, we're helping you work through that. What industries have you worked with?
Yeah, a lot of industries. So I first started out in selling it's going to be funny because I'm literally the least handyman person on the planet. My wife actually hangs the pictures in our house because I just can't do it. But I started out selling insulation for home, residential, LED lighting, weather stripping around doors, and just things like that would make homes more energy efficient, right? And it wasn't because I loved being energy efficient. I'm not go green type of guy, but it was a need, and I just identified what's a need that's out there right now, and what can I provide? Is there a solution that I can provide? And so that's where we started out. And through that process, I realized, obviously a ton of trial and error, but we did, our first 6 months, we did 2.1 million in sales selling these products. And went on the next year, we did another 12 million. At that point, I realized the system is really what worked. The product was kind of irrelevant. And so I started another company, and we helped with aging in place, stair lifts, walk-in bathtubs, barrier-free showers, things like that. Again, a need that's out there. Every single day, over 10,000 people are turning the age of 65, and people want to stay in their home. So it's I found out what that need was, and could I provide a solution for it? And so, and then from there, obviously financial advisors, attorneys have been using this model for decades. It's not like I've invented this by any means. I think I've perfected it, and we've been able to do it in numerous different verticals in the home remodeling industry, medical, dental, cosmetic surgeries, things like that, the travel industry, not shady timeshare stuff. But yeah, that's to preface that. But we've done investment clubs. So the industry is really irrelevant as long as there's one key component to using this format, because we always start when we onboard a new client, we always start with the strategy call. Like, I'm not just going to all of a sudden take a client on if I know that this isn't an effective way for their product or their service to take it to market, because this does take money, to fill events, because we're filling events and we're buying them dinner, right? That's the hook. We're getting them to come to the event because we're buying them a nice steak dinner. So it takes money to do this. So if you have a $48 widget with no additional lifetime value to that customer, I will be the first to tell you that you shouldn't do this. Use our online guys and build out an online funnel for that, right? Because there's just not enough margin in that product to make this system, self-sustaining. Because our goal, we typically starting with the end in mind, we always want to have like a 300% ROI on your campaign. So if I know that it's going to take $5,000 to host your, 3 seminars this week, I want to make sure that I can at least, return 15 grand on that thing, right? If not, maybe we need to look at a different form of marketing, or if I can make way more than that, great, then let's pour some gas on the marketing and really, turn this thing on. But at the end of the day, typically, we want at least about $1,000 profit margin within a product in order to make this system, really work. So, and that's why I always say profit margin, because, we have people that sell these investment clubs where it's $5,000 to get in, and then there's zero cost of goods in that. So that works beautiful. But then I could have a solar company that maybe has a $10,000 package, but their cost of goods could be, $6,000, right? So there's $4,000 profit there. And I want to make sure that we go about this as wise as possible for our clients, because it doesn't do me any good to take a client on and fail, right? The only way that we succeed is if I can assure their success, right? Because I'm not looking for a one and done type of approach. I want this to be a lifelong relationship, and to be a true selling system. That's why we call it the predictable, sustainable, and scalable selling system.
Well, so I wonder, just sort of as an extension to that question, what industries is this best for? I think that was good to find some clarity around the types of things that this might work for. But can everybody sell? So you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show, some people just being unlikable, which I totally understand. But generally speaking, because I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, they might, go start a company or something because it's a passion, or they've got something they're really interested in or whatever. But the brass tacks of it is, you've got to sell it to make money. You've got to, be able to profit to actually move forward. So, can anybody sell? Like, should somebody come to you and just say, hey, I need to, improve my selling skills, so this is the guy to talk to? And does it work for basically everybody? Or is there a certain type of person that you think is the key guy, back to identifying customers, who is yours?
Yeah, that's perfect, man. Because how I actually transitioned from my own company selling these products and services to now teaching people how to do this was literally, I came home on a Wednesday night. We were hosting our events on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then I would meet with people one-on-one Tuesdays, Wednesdays. So I was actually working 3 days a week and making well over $10,000 and doing that. That Craigslist ad was accurate. But I had zero passion. And you mentioned passion, Ryan, and I think that was key. I had zero passion for those products that we were selling. Like, I could give a rip about them. What I had passion for was providing for my family, right? Like, that's why I get out of bed every morning is to be able to provide. But I thought back, I came home that night, my wife and daughter were already asleep. And for those that are listening that, maybe they've experienced some success and financially everything's good to go, but they just still feel like that unfulfillment, like that desire that there's something more out there. That was exactly what I had felt. Like, financially, things were great. We just built the house and everything was, good on the surface, but I just had that desire for, there's something else out there. I didn't care about any of these products. And I thought back to when I first started out, before doing these group events, selling one-on-one, and the continual feast and famine kind of lifestyle that we had, because I never knew where my next lead was coming from, where the next sale was coming from. And that sucked, right? To be frank. And I thought back, like, man, that was a terrible feeling. And I know there are brilliant entrepreneurs out there that have a wonderful product, a wonderful service. That's their passion, but they don't know how to get it out to the masses, right? And so I knew my passion was people and being able to pour into them and build them up. So if I found somebody with a product or service that was passionate about it, and like I said, if you build it, they don't come, you've got to have a system in place. Could my system be the product? That's how this all kind of came about. And I just started to write everything that we've learned from, some of the stuff we've talked about here on crafting your message, to how to set the room up, how to negotiate with restaurants, the scripting that we use to make sure people actually show up on the confirmation calls. All of that I just kind of wrote into what is now known as the social dynamic selling system. And so I realized learning through this process and taking on new clients, as you said, Ryan, like there's some people they're unicorns and they have the gift to charm and sell, and they're fantastic. Those are the easy clients, right? But then sometimes you do get the engineer guy who would love to tell you all the facts and figures, and and he can sell to other engineers that way. But every buying decision, I don't care what anybody says, every buying decision is emotional. Now, as I said, it needs to be backed by logic in order for it to, not cancel or, walk out of the timeshare room like you had mentioned and be like, what the heck did I just buy? So every buying decision is emotional. And I learned that we had to teach people this process, right? So when we take on a client, we teach them, how to stand in front of the room, where to stand in front of the room, how to use different techniques like anchoring. So we can definitely teach that, right? And I'm living proof of this because, man, when I was a sophomore in high school, in speech class, I literally, what did I have? Probably 15 kids in my class. I grew up in small town South Dakota, but I would stand in front of the room and I would just tremor in my hands, holding my note cards. Like, and those are people that I knew. Like, why would I get so nervous through them? And that was a terrible, terrible experience. And so for my speech, Mr. Fonder is his name. If he could see me now speaking at all these events, I would imagine he'd be impressed. But that's living proof that this can be learned if that's your desire. But if it's not, we have a program in which we can train a sales rep. We can do the hiring process for you and build your sales team. Or you can hire us to do it yourself. We take on a few kind of done for you clients each year, on a case-by-case basis, essentially, just because we don't have time to do that for all of our clients. But that's just kind of determined in part of our strategy call in our initial strategy days. We really lay out the foundation of the program and then determine, our level of engagement on what you can do, what we can do. Does it make sense? What are your capabilities? And then out of that day, we can, really have a roadmap to success on starting out your initial campaigns.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. As a way to sort of extend that even one step further, at what stage in a process would it be best for somebody to approach you? So for example, I'm already working for a company. We're trying to improve sales. Am I the guy who should be coming to you, or do you take the guy, or do you like the guy who is the startup founder who maybe doesn't even have a product yet, but is just trying to learn some foundational stuff? Like, at what stage in the game should people, I guess, really start getting heavy into the sales stuff? Because I suspect, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I suspect that most people don't think about sales until it's kind of too late. They've already built their widget, and now it's like, crap, I've got 100 of these in my garage, and now I need to move them. And so I suspect that's when people come on board. But when would be the prime time to really step into a relationship with you guys?
Yeah, I would say the sooner the better. Unfortunately, that's usually what happens, as you mentioned, is people have this idea and then they're like, okay, can I even sell this thing now? Do people even want this? I wanted it, but now that I've built this, or whatever their product is, the sooner the better, because sales cures a lot of things, especially with a startup, right? If you don't have revenue, and I've never had an outside investor or anything like that. It was like, I self-funded everything that we had to do. And I encourage our people to do that too, because, relying on outsourced revenue is our outsourced funding or something. Maybe you have to give up a piece of your company. I love to take people on that are in the startup phases. They don't know how to, buy enough product or inventory And we can do that by pre-selling things for them through this format. So the sooner the better. There's never a bad time by any means. If you're looking to, if you're a $100 million company and your goal is to be 200 million, we can show you how to do that. And that's really the scalable aspect of our system as well, is because, I'll just give a quick example. We had a solar company that hired us. This was been a couple years ago down in Florida. And again, I didn't really know much about solar at all. I guess the sun hits these panels and turns, AC or DC into AC, whatever it is. I didn't know anything about it, but I know how people make buying decisions. And so this company, I flew into Florida. We filled 3 separate days of events for them. We flew into Florida. They delivered a presentation firsthand. It was god awful. And they got like no appointments out of it. And I said, all right, let me do this next one. It was a back-to-back presentations. And we did the presentation. There was, I think, 25 opportunities for appointments in there. We ended up generating 13 appointments to meet with the next day. And then I went out with them the next day in the field, and we ended up selling over $200,000 in solar projects within that, 48-hour time period. I didn't know anything about solar. I still don't. I don't care to know anything about it, but we do know how people make buying decisions and getting them to, people view things in pictures, right? You can tell them all the different facts and figures and everything about how the sun hits the panel and whatever else. But at the end of the day, they want to know how it's going to benefit them. And that's how we get them to picture what that's going to feel and look like to do your part to, help take care of the environment, or to open up your utility bill and notice that it's, now $12 instead of $230, like what that's going to feel like. We want to bring up those emotions for them, through this whole, sales process. I have no idea where I was going with this, Ryan. Get me back on track.
No, I think that's great. That was just us sort of trying to determine, who would be an ideal customer, for your system. And I think that sort of helps clarify. I think, like we mentioned, there's so many people who maybe wait until too late in the game. And I can even sort of picture, even in my own life, hearing what you're talking about, me going, well, I'm not quite ready. The business isn't far enough along to think about that, or, whatever. And so I could see maybe people be a little hesitant. So I was trying to sort of unearth that a little bit.
Yeah.
I wonder, though, just as a tangential item, just because it was a service you guys or that you mentioned that you do sometimes too, is maybe we could talk a little bit about sales reps and finding out when you need one. Again, like we've sort of talked about issues around this, which is, can everybody sell, and how to make a determination whether you're the guy. And now we've sort of discussed when you should maybe think about doing this. But what if you are just sort of the visionary at a company, for example, and maybe you've got the message, but God, it's just not in you to be out there and be the sales guy. When is the right time to think about engaging a salesperson? And, what could you expect to get out of one, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Because I think if you are the visionary, then you know that. And you need, one of the best things that I've been able to do is delegate within our, organization. Because I'm a true believer that, everybody needs a role, and everybody has a giftings. And if we're all excellent at something, right? And so the pilots need to fly, the chefs need to cook, everybody needs a specific role within a company. And I know as the owner, the entrepreneur, nobody can do it as good as you, right? But you got to get that mentality out of your head, because even if you can hire somebody that can do it at least 80%, or even 60% to the effort of what you can do it, that's still going to be more productive for you to focus on your time, energy, and efforts on what you do best. And if that is, tinkering with the product or making it better, then great. But then hiring the right people, surrounding yourself with the right people, is really what had catapulted our companies and allowed me to scale early on. And finding the right salespeople can be tough. Right? There's a lot of shady, slimy people out there. And so, the hiring process can certainly be tough. And then that's why we brought that kind of in-house and provide that for clients as well. And we do, hiring, can do hiring all throughout the country if need be for our clients, because that is a specific niche, I guess we'll call it that it's hard to find those good quality people. And then having that company culture, that is you, the visionary, the entrepreneur, like what is that culture like? And how, again, just like we're going to craft a message to get people to come to our events so you can sell your products, we're going to craft a message that is built based upon who you are and the company that you're looking to provide or looking to build here. And so starting with the end in mind, we identify that, and then we can cast that net, sift through the sand, and find those right salespeople. And they might not be all in-house. Like personally, we have over 20 sales reps that live in 20 different states right now, for one of my companies. So it depends upon your, what do I want to say? It depends upon the type of business that you are and your geographically, your location, on how we would go about finding those and recruiting those right sales reps, and building out the right compensation plan and things like that.
Well, and I suppose that part of it is looking out for certain characteristics that some people might have. Like you can leverage your experience to understand what makes a good salesperson. So as you're doing interviews and things, you can figure that out. Do you actually help coach an organization though in I guess making that transition? Because again, and this actually is from my experience. Thinking about trying to hire a salesperson in the past. Like I wouldn't even know where to begin. And it's not just about even finding that person, but how do I communicate to them what I need done? And how do I make sure that they're aligned with what I'm doing and all that kind of thing? Like, I mean, is that something that you guys provide as your service? Is you sort of, I guess, coach up your client to make sure that they're communicating the right things to a salesperson in a way that makes sense to a salesperson?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's a key component is how are you motivating them? Are the things that you're doing motivating them for the right behaviors, right? Like, for example, right now, my cousin just came over to the house the other day and he's on unemployment now. He's literally making more money on unemployment than he was at his job previous to, the Corona thing. So he has zero incentive to want to go back to work. Like his company said, hey, we can go back to work. And he's like, nah, I'm cool. I'm just going to continually collect my unemployment. It's like, you got to motivate and incentivize people with the right, to want to do the right behaviors, right? So that's definitely a key component in not only the hiring process, but just the ongoing training and part of that company culture that you're looking to build. So we train our clients to build that component into their hiring and recruiting process. And we obviously can't do this for everybody. So we often will like to more so train the trainer type format, right? Like identify the key person within your business, and then we'll teach them what they need to do to build that company culture, how to recruit appropriately, incentivize appropriately. And then that was more of a trickle effect that'll happen throughout the actual organization.
So you've mentioned a couple times about your online sales pipeline versus the actual events that you have. With this COVID crisis that's going on right now and the lack of ability to get together and have these seminars, can you talk a little bit about how you've changed your business model because of that, and how because we're kind of in limbo right now. We don't know how soon things are going to open nationally versus just Florida or Texas or whatever. Yeah, you might be able to have seminars there, but for the interim, we're all kind of stuck at home, but we still need to generate leads. Can you talk about an online pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that was when restaurants started to shut down in March. That was a huge. Literally in 1 week, we canceled 107 events throughout the country. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that I had, not necessarily lost, because I still had those leads, but that we had invested, paid down payments, things like that to these restaurants. So it was a very eye-opening experience. Certainly poked holes in our business model, right? So I always try to take, what can I learn from this? There's no failure, there's only feedback, right? So what can I learn from this? And we immediately went to work. I mean, I've done webinars and different things in the past, just, promoting my company and things, but I hadn't really provided that as a service for our clients. And so we immediately went to work and built out our online platform, in which, within a few days we were driving traffic We even did like sent direct mail to drive people to an online webinar. But then obviously we built out our online funnels through Facebook and things like that for some of our clients that are opting in for webinars. And it allowed us to, I think, we're coming out of this stronger than ever as a company, because it's allowed us to increase our products and services for our clients that, through like continual trial and error, but we've been able to monetize that, as we're learning this process. So it's going to be fantastic for us to be able to, still offer those services. And this is where, dinner seminars might not make sense. But if we get on the phone and we determine that, heck, you could have a heck of an online funnel here. We can build out a Facebook campaign for you. Great. Our services and product offerings have actually expanded because of this. I still fully, truly believe the dinner seminar format is always going to convert better. I just know it because it's what I've done over the last decade with that in-person approach. But if your product isn't of that ticket item that we had talked about, an online funnel might be a better format. And again, we've been able to do that now for our clients that are loving this, because heck, some of them are realizing they don't need these big buildings and all this overhead and this staff, because they can automate things online now versus having to do everything in person.
Makes sense. So that the online presence is a little different. Usually there's like a giveaway, like an ebook or, subscribe to our newsletter or this or that. And then you kind of start the funnel that way.
Sure.
Are there any other tactics that you might imply if you're designing your site or building it from the ground up? What are some things that you would implement into a sales funnel?
Yeah, we still, certainly we have ebooks. There's always giveaways, like we offer our dinner seminar blueprint, right? People can go get the blueprint of how to develop your own campaign. So there's those offerings, but much like what we do with our dinner seminars, what we did personally, because I wanted to look at, how could I help with what's going on right now? All these restaurants are, some of them are not reopening. They just couldn't, sustain what the shutdown that we've been going through. So what we did is we still offered a gift card to their local restaurant, right? It did two things. It helped provide that restaurant, income when nothing was going on. They couldn't have patrons in their establishment. So, but also then that potential client of mine sees that in that we're still trying to add value, and that's kind of that know, like, and trust. Where if they opt in and book their consultation, we will provide them a $25, a $50, a $100 gift card to that local restaurant. So it still helped out like these smaller. It worked extremely well in these more rural communities where it is a family-ran operation, and people wanted to do their part. So they would just get on a phone consultation. And then obviously at that point, the client needs to, make sure that they can convert and they're using the proper language and things like that over the phone versus actually in person.
I just want to say props to you on offering the gift cards from the local businesses that are hurting. A lot of those companies are overlooked, and that's a good way for someone who wants to keep their favorite restaurant open during this time, is to buy some gift cards and still support the business, even if you can't get the food. So
Absolutely.
Props on that.
Yeah.
One other question I have for you comes directly from direct mail marketing and how to set up a campaign. Any good third-party providers that you use? How do you niche down on your target demographic? Because you can almost get to the point where you can say, I want this zip code and I want people 65 and older. Is there a cheaper way to go about doing it than hiring a company to do it for you? Or is pretty much going after a company that already has these lists generated the best way to go?
Yeah. So if you have an existing database that, we can market to, obviously that's going to be the cheapest, because then we don't have to buy the data, the list. If maybe you have a client or a customer that, can be a repeat customer, you're offering another product and you have their name, address, phone number, things like that. We can target them with, just the cost of postage essentially. there's always every door direct mail, right? That's the postal service that the problem with that is you can't target. Everybody gets it. It's not personalized, and it's junk mail, right? That's really what it is. So why we focus on these targeted lists is it's a much higher response rate, right? When I can send a personalized invitation out that says, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, you're cordially invited to, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or the Lone Star Restaurant, whatever it is. And then it talks about, what you're going to be discussing at that event and things along those lines. So, but we can get so darn specific. Sometimes you can get too specific, right? And we don't want to disqualify people by getting too specific, but we want to get somewhat specific. And that's why we identify that client avatar. And as you mentioned, it's, an age range, right? We can do single family dwelling units. So if they actually own that home, that property, they're not renting. We can just do renters. We can do, income, which, I'm looking for people that have an income over $75,000 a year, or income producing assets, right? Because somebody who's retired might not have income anymore, but they have income producing assets, like, $500,000 in a 401k. Like, all that data is out there, and it just depends. The more layers that we add on, the more expensive that list tends to get. So we typically, again, dependent upon who you're looking for, right? Our investment club that we were filling events for, they needed people that had like $2 million in income producing assets, and they had readily $500,000 in liquid cash, right, that they could invest. So we had to get hyper specific with that. We've mentioned solar quite a bit here. For a solar company, it's just, I want to make sure it's a homeowner, right? And certainly probably has some income. And then we can look at the age range on who's making this. Is an 80-year-old really going to do solar on their home when they're probably not going to get any ROI on it? Or is it a younger, group? So we starting with the end in mind is where we figured all that out. But if you're not getting specific, every door direct mail, literally just paying for the price of postage. However, your response rate is going to be a lot less because it's not personalized, and it looks like just every other piece of junk mail that's out there. Because typically we want to get typically at least a 1% response rate if we're looking at direct mail. So it's why I love direct mail. Is it's easily measurable. If I send 5,000 pieces and I get 50 responses, cool, I got a 1% response rate.
That makes sense. You mentioned that the personalization matters versus just sending a generic postcard. Do you get down to, are you sending actual physical letters? Or are you sending nicer postcards with their name printed on it? Like there's little tactics in each one. What's your preferred method?
Yeah, definitely a letter, like a wedding style envelope is great. Because it is something, it sets you apart and they can see their name on it, versus, because literally when people get their mail, this is what they're doing. They're standing over their garbage can, and you got to catch their decision. Like they're either throwing it in the garbage or they're going to, set it aside and then open it up afterwards. So you got to catch them with something. And postcards typically don't get as high of a response rate than an envelope in which they're actually going to take the time to open it and then read, what your offer actually is. We can do specific pearls, like, when we were doing the energy conservation, we had a URL that was nopowerbill.com/Betty Johnson, right? Their name. They're like, oh, I got my own website, and people can go to that and then they can actually register for the events online. So there's things that we've learned that get a higher response rate. And that's kind of a B2C format, but B2B, if you're trying to attract a CEO or somebody else, if we send it to the business, there's usually a gatekeeper that's, throwing all that junk mail away. So we might have to do something more savvy. Like we've, for example, have sent physical chairs, like plastic chairs, and with it, a letter attached to it. But when they get that and they say, Bill Johnson, you need to take a seat and read what I have to tell you. that's going to capture, there's some tricks to getting the right people that you want into your audience. We can get hyper specific, or if it's, just more general, that's obviously going to be less expensive. But then again, I don't really care. I never look at how expensive it is. I want to know what my ROI is going to be, because if I can spend $100,000 every week to get $300,000, I would never not do that. Right.
Right. One last thing. So we're starting to get to the end of this thing, but I wanted to talk to you about one thing specifically. One thing I've observed just over the course of this conversation, and it's kind of a compliment, is just how adaptable you seem to have been throughout like this crisis and everything else. You took a business that was predominantly predicated on the ability to take people to dinner and, quickly modified that to be able to go online and all that stuff. But I think it sort of circles back to something we were talking about at the beginning, which was, understanding the benefits and those sorts of things, and specifically identifying the needs of people. And so I wondered if you could just sort of talk a little bit about sort of the skills required, or, what you can do to help, I guess, foster the ability to be able to identify the needs of people. And, it sounds like something that's maybe a little bit inherent in you, like it's just something you've always been good at. You could sort of see a situation and recognize a need. But I wondered if just for people now who might be struggling in business, or maybe they want to use this as an opportunity to start a business, are there tools or tricks or anything you can offer to sort of help people spot needs in the making that need to be addressed? Yeah, absolutely. I think all of it comes down to effectively communicating. Okay. So, and why I had written this second book, and we have a sales training course that we're going to be releasing on that as well, is because in sales, it's all about communication, right? To be able to ask the right questions, to get people to, again, even if it is subconsciously, identify, I did need that, or some people just don't know what they need, right? And you have to ask the right questions and get them to have that aha moment that, your product or your service could actually help them. So I think whether you're in sales or not, look up NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Okay, just do a search on it, and there's tons of courses out there. There's tons of companies. I'm a master practitioner in NLP, and it's not about sales. It's about to effectively communicate. With the course that I built is how to use NLP in the sales format. Those 5 components of building rapport, asking questions, identifying the need, linking the need, and then obviously closing the deal. So how to effectively communicate and get people, we're kind of pulling the string in our entire presentation, our sales process, where I'm trying to get them like a kitty cat to just keep batting at my string, right? And that's the goal of that, and creating that environment where they just want what you have to offer versus actually feeling like they were sold something or pressured into making a bad decision. So anybody can benefit, because I know I said whether you're in sales or not, I know we are all in sales. I don't care if you're the engineer at the company or the janitor at the company, you're in sales, right? Because you're selling. If you're married, I'm selling my wife every single day why she shouldn't leave me, right? Like we're always selling something, no matter what. As from the janitor, he's selling the kids to not put the gum under the lunch table, right? Like there's always ways and levels in which we can sell, and that all comes back to communicating effectively. And again, I encourage anybody to look up NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and how that can be helpful in any relationship, not just in sales itself. Yeah, I love that. I think that's really great.
So we're almost at that time, Rylee. Do you want to tell people where they can find you, and any plugs you want to give real quick?
Sure. So RyleeMeek.com is, a good site, I guess. Of course, it's a good site. But my name is obviously spelled a little different. RYLEEM as in Mary, EEK, RyleeMeek.com. If anybody wants to look at like that blueprint that I had mentioned, dinnerseminarblueprint.com. There's a free download there. You can get like a blueprint of what that actually looks like. Socialdynamicselling.com. There's good resources on there, case studies of clients that we've worked with over the last few years. I have a book, Food for Thought: How to Use Dinner Seminar Marketing to Grow Your Business in Ways You Never Thought Possible. Actually, we're doing a kind of a free plus shipping offer on that. And that's at socialdynamicsalesacademy.com. I think it's like, I don't know, $7 or something like that they can get it. A physical copy will be sent out to them. It's also available on Amazon.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to do this, Rylee. I know things are crazy right now amid, crisis and everything else. And it sounds like you guys have been moving fast to keep up. So, so thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ryan, Mike, thank you guys so much. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much to all our listeners, everybody who tunes in every week. And feel free to continue to support the show. It's eggscast.com. And we'll see y'all next time.